Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a Q&A episode, and I have three questions I want to dive into. But first, before I do that, I just want to go over, I have my free resource, Body Recomp Checklist 2.0. And so I dive into really what are the most important things around a body recomp. And again, when I say body recomp, I'm talking, yes, in the short term, you could lose body fat and build muscle at the same time, but we're also talking over time, losing body fat and building muscle and improving our body composition. So if you want to know the most important things for that, the link to that is in the show notes. You can download it completely free. So if you are interested in that, and have that will get you moving in the right direction in terms of everything that I talk about here on the podcast. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's question. So my first question I have. So the first two are going to be fairly quick, and I want to spend most of my time on this last question, which I think is really good. And this can maybe help you rethink fat loss and everything like that. So first question I had was creatine or whey protein in a fat loss phase. And these questions are kind of funny to me, right? Now, again, I don't know if this person was specifically asking like which one's more important, or should they take both, or should they just take one or the other. Maybe it's like a cost thing where they can only choose one or the other. And so I'm going to give you my reasons. I'll go through both, right? Or I'll go through all three scenarios. One, and I guess one of the scenarios will end up being, we'll take out one of them, but one, do we need to choose one or the other? Two, if, let's say it's either a budget thing, or again, you just simply want to know what is the most important, I'll go over that. So first, I want to talk about this kind of thought process around either or. So again, I don't know if the question asker was saying what's most important, but I'm just going to, just generally speaking here, a lot of times we think about things in either or, right? Kind of fashion, especially when it comes to fitness and nutrition. I feel like it's really an either or type thing, a black and white thing, and very rarely is that ever the case. So it's like here in this situation, do you need to take creatine or whey protein in a fat loss phase? Well, in a perfect world, you're taking both. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't take either of those in a fat loss phase. Creatine, again, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to help with lean body mass, which is going to be super helpful in a fat loss phase. And there's so many other benefits of creatine in terms of recovery. And now, even looking at like brain health and cognitive function as well too. So making creatine something that, we really should take at all times, and there's really no downside to taking it at all times, and especially in a fat loss phase, right? Because you'll just commonly see people be like, oh, well, I'm going to stop taking creatine because, people think, oh, it holds water weight. And, again, like maybe you hold a little bit more water weight, but it draws water into the muscles. It makes them look fuller. So again, that's, you're going to be somewhat flat in a fat loss phase because you're not bringing in as much energy as you typically do. And so we want to keep creatine in. If anything, I think it's more important to keep it in when you're fat loss dieting than it would be when you're trying to gain, but you should keep it in at all times. There's no reason to stop taking it. And again, we need to take it consistently. So definitely should take it. Whey protein, again, there's no magic to whey protein other than it's a way to help you get more protein. But, again, it can be hard to eat enough protein in general, right? If we start to try to hit that 1 gram per pound of body weight, it can be really challenging to do that through just food. So that's where whey protein comes in. It can be a way to help you get more protein. And then on top of it, in a fat loss phase, we may opt to have a little bit more protein than we typically would, say, in a gaining phase or maintenance or whatever it may be. So, that's my rationale for why we need both of these in. I wouldn't choose one or the other. Now, if it comes down to a budget thing, and then and I'll enter that second, because it's really going to come down to, so what would be more important, right? We're going to take it from that angle. So again, I would ideally have you have both. We would use creatine, for all the reasons I mentioned, and then protein, it would help pad our protein stats. There's no magic benefit to protein powder other than it's a way to help you get enough protein in. So in saying that, what would be the most important to take, or if you had to spend your money on it, I would say creatine. Just in my rationale for that is we can get in enough protein. Like I said, the main reason for protein is it helps you hit your protein numbers. We can get it in through food if we need to. So you do have that option there. Whereas with creatine, you can still get it in through food, but it's a little bit tougher. And because we're not we're eating a little less, it can be a little bit more challenging because we're just not bringing in as many calories. So ideally, what's going to be more important if I had to choose a supplement, I would say creatine for that reason, because we can really just get enough protein in through food. Right. So again, when it comes down to the budget thing, that's why I'm going to lean towards, if it is a budget kind of constraint where you have to choose one or the other, I'm going to have you pick creatine. Now, saying that, protein food isn't necessarily cheap either. So you do have to kind of run into that. So you need to weigh the pros and cons of all that. But the cool thing with creatine is it is fairly cheap, whereas protein powder is going to be a little bit more expensive. But again, in saying that, food, protein, high protein food sources aren't necessarily the cheapest either there. So again, in a fat loss phase, sum it up. Ideally, we would take both. Again, gave you the reasons, the rationale why. But if we have to choose one or the other, I'm going to choose creatine for those reasons. Again, if anybody has any questions on this, let me know, and I'd love to hear, if you guys would choose something different. All right. So my next question is around time of day for workout. Somebody asked, "Hey, what's the best time to work out? Would it be at like 7 a.m. or would it be at 6 p.m.?" And so my answer to this is whenever you can get it in and whatever's going to keep you consistent is priority number one for me. Okay. So that's what we're going to be focused on. At the end of the day, in the research, and so there's really no, in the research, nothing's like, hey, you need to do it here at this time, right? You're not going to see this crazy amount of different results by doing it at a certain time. Now, in saying that, I believe, in terms of performance and when we look at like our hormonal profile, around midday seems to be best, from that standpoint, if we're looking at it just from that. But, again, just because something from a hormonal profile, is set up for best results doesn't necessarily mean that actually translates into actual results, which is what we are after. So again, that from my understanding of the research, that's kind of where that time of day is. But again, there's so many things that go into it. If that time of day doesn't work for you, well, then, what are you not going to work out now? Well, that's worse than you working out in the morning or later, right? And also, do you find that you personally have good training sessions around that? If you don't, then again, maybe splitting it up between at a different time is going to be better for you. So again, we need to look at obviously like how do you feel, but then also where does it actually fit into your schedule? And the most important thing is that you get it in. So for a lot of people, the morning works because that's a way, people have full-time jobs, kids, everything, things come up. And so that's a way to make sure that you get it in by doing it first thing in the day and in the morning. Whereas if you wait, there's so many things that can pop up. So if you're trying to build the habit of getting back into a solid routine and staying consistent, I think getting it in the morning is going to be helpful from that standpoint. But at the end of the day, we need to focus on when whatever works best for your schedule and allows you to stay consistent. Okay. And again, if we look at the research, maybe sometime in the middle of the day is going to be the best from that standpoint. But from my understanding, that doesn't actually translate into actual results. It's just, again, kind of what sets us up potentially there for like, hey, when you may be your strongest. So again, we want to do that. Now, as I said on my Instagram, if I'm being picky here, the one thing that I'm going to say here would be, so again, remember everything I said still matters and that's still the most important. But if I'm going to be picky here, I would ideally like us to not work out a couple hours before bed. Again, that's going to impact your sleep quality and your ability to fall asleep. And so again, we want to try to, if we do work out late at night, we want to make sure that it's, lower intensity. It's not super intense. And again, if that's the only time you can get it in, hey, that's the only time you can get it in. To me, that's going to be more important than like, oh, well, hey, Jeff said that, you probably don't want to work out a couple hours before bed. Well, hey, now I'm not going to do it. That's just you making an excuse to not get it in. But again, if we're looking at optimizing things here, ideally we would do it earlier in the day and not right before bed, as this can impact your sleep there. So again, and the more intense it is, the more it's going to impact it. Now, if you have to do it every once in a while for whatever reason, it's probably not a big deal. It's just, if you regularly do it, then I would imagine that you may see worse results over a year span if everything else was the same compared to somebody who, was able to work out earlier in the day. Because again, it's going to impact sleep, which is going to impact things, more indirectly than anything, more than, hey, you're going to get 2 less reps on your bench press because you're working out late at night. That's not really the thing. It's more so the indirect of how it's going to impact sleep and then how that can impact everything else that we're doing there. So sum it up, we are getting it in when we can. That's going to be the most important from a research standpoint. Maybe, we're set up to have our best training sessions in the middle of the day. And then 3, ideally, if we can, we're going to try to avoid lifting or intense exercise a couple hours before bed. So that would be my order of operations there on that. But again, if the one thing you take away is, well, Jeff said I should work out in the middle of the day, that should not be the takeaway whatsoever. That's not what I'm saying. Again, you need to get it in when you can, and just try to limit it right before bed. All right. So last question came around was, dude, is there a magic trick to getting the last bit of fat off on my body off my abs. I'm down from 185 to 160, have pretty much zero fat anywhere but my abs. I legit can't lose much more weight without it eating muscle. Is it just a patience thing and grind forward where I'm at, going to refeed? So really, to me, this comes down to, okay, hey, so you're already pretty lean, and where do you go from here? So, this person did send me their physique, and they are lean. However, I do, kind of looking at probably this is the thing that sucks is this person's super lean, but when you think you're lean enough and you really want to get like absolutely shredded. I mean, this person's very lean, and you want to get absolutely shredded and completely cut off all your body fat. I mean, you need a little bit longer than you think with that. So again, a lot of times we overestimate the amount of body fat we have and where we need to be to see what we want to see there, right? But where I want to take this is just kind of losing that last little bit of body fat. Okay, I mean, you've lost a good amount already, and now it's like, okay, I feel like I have to eat at muscle or whatever it is to continue to trend down. So I just kind of want to talk about what that looks like. So losing the last few pounds of fat is challenging, both because of physiological and psychological factors. Okay. And so the fat loss process is not linear. A lot of people think it's just, hey, you just keep losing body fat and it's very linear, right? But what worked at you losing weight at higher body fats may not be effective. Okay. And this may change over time. So we may have to kind of change our approach here. Okay. So first, biggest reason, your body will likely fight to defend a comfortable body fat range. Okay. So the dual intervention model, this suggests that your body has a range where it maintains fat levels easily, and then moving outside of these ranges, especially getting leaner, it increases, kind of that resistance to continue to go lower. So think we have, this kind of range where your body feels comfortable at from a body fat standpoint. And again, everyone, some people's may be a little bit larger, some people's may be a little bit tighter. And then when we look at, our body's a lot better at resisting fat loss than it is fat gain. Okay. So, it might be this thing where it's this hard kind of, it's like a more black and white kind of stop point at the bottom. And then it's more of like a gray area at the top where it's like, yeah, we can kind of keep going here. We want to kind of slow things down, but we can keep going. Whereas on the way down, it's probably like, whoa, you're really going to start to feel that resistance where you may not feel it as much on the way up. And again, this is also dependent from person to person. Like I said, some people's is going to be a little bit larger. Some people's window is going to be a little bit tighter there. Okay. So that's the first thing we need to look at is, I'm sure everyone's been there, right? You've lost, say, 5-10 pounds of fat, and you can do that fairly easy, but then you hit this point where things really slow down, and that's kind of where this dual intervention model comes into play. As levels drop, hormones shift, okay? So leptin, which regulates hunger and metabolism, drops, while ghrelin, the hunger hormone, will rise, okay? So this makes staying in a calorie deficit harder as we continue to push down. So this is just where, I've talked about previous times where, again, when we fat loss diet, this is one of the downsides there of what happens, right? So it can make it very hard to continue to drop body fat as we get further and further away from this, intervention point here. And on top of it, there is going to be a little bit of some metabolic adaptation that occurs, meaning your body burns fewer calories at rest and during activity. So, we may have to adjust our caloric intake down potentially to keep kind of pushing through here, right? And so these trade-offs increase as you get leaner and leaner. Okay. So going from obese to overweight is relatively, I don't want to say it's easy because it's not easy, but it's easier than it would be to say get super lean. And really your basic stuff's going to work here. Basic diet and exercise changes, hey, just going from 5,000 steps to 8,000 is probably going to help you drop some body weight. Just tightening up your nutrition is going to help you drop, you could just literally cut out maybe your processed foods or just eat more veggies and more protein, and you're going to see things trend down at this point, right? There's less friction at this point. Going from, say, for men's standpoint, 15% body fat to 10% is going to require a little bit more adherence to your diet, your meal timing, and training. Plus, we're going to have some social trade-offs here, eating out less, tracking more carefully, managing hunger. And for women, you could probably say that's somewhere around that like 18 to 22% body fat percentage, right? As you continue to drop down, these are going to show up. At very lean levels, we're talking 6 to 9% for men, 15 to 20% for women. Sacrifices increase more, and then you're going to need even more kind of structured nutrition, stricter recovery habits, stricter habits around food. So you're just going to continue to see these trade-offs and everything continue to go up as you get leaner and leaner. And again, for some people, depending on the dual intervention model, you may have to focus a little bit more on, like, it may be tougher for some people. And this is where it comes to, some people can just maintain a little bit of a leaner composition during period for most of the year, and some people need to be a little bit higher, and they'll just naturally kind of gravitate towards a little bit higher. Again, it just all depends on your body. But the big takeaway here that I want you to get is, as you get leaner and leaner, the trade-offs and the sacrifices increase, generally speaking, right? So that's the big thing that we need to understand, is just because this person going from, say, 185 to 175, probably not very, like, again, challenging, some sacrifices, but not very challenging. Going from 175 down to 165, hey, they're starting to feel it. They're having to really stay on top of things. Getting from 165 to 160, it's like, damn, I freaking have exhausted everything. But again, you may just find that this is all this at play here that's going on. Things are going to be a little bit more challenging. So three main reasons people struggle to lose the last bit of fat is going to be: one, they're physically not ready. Okay. So this is going to come from the standpoint of your body. We just may have too many stressors on the body right now. So this could be from prolonged dieting, right? That's obviously one kind of stressor on the body. You may have disrupted sleep now at this point. Again, that's going to be a stressor on the body. Poor biofeedback, low libido, poor recovery, etc. So again, physically, we're just not ready to continue to go down. At that point, we need to take stress off the body somehow at this point, right? So that's one kind of thing that people run into. So this is where we can incorporate diet breaks, refeeds, etc. Okay. Again, you just have this kind of high stress on the body, and just high stress in general, like outside of the stressors you're putting on your body, right? Again, getting this lean is a stressor on the body. A calorie deficit's a stressor on the body. That starts to impact sleep. That's a stressor on the body. You already have a high stress lifestyle with your job. That's going to be a stressor on the body. So there's just so much stress on the body that it's going to be hard to continue to push past this standpoint. And this is where all the lifestyle things come to play. And then again, being more strategic with refeeds and diet breaks. Second, mentally, you may not be ready to get to this level of leanness. Getting ultra lean requires higher resilience to hunger, social pressures, and setbacks. If someone struggles with, like, say, tracking consistency, emotional eating, or adjusting to slower progress, this can be a barrier. Where it's like, hey, you may not notice as much change on the scale weight. Is that something that's going to get in your head, or do you? What does that look like? But again, you're going to have to be on top of your hunger. It's probably going to be this constant hunger, that you're going to have as you get, to this point to where this person is. Three, your diet nutrition skills may not be, they maybe need to be refined, or you maybe need to continue to dial them in, right? So at higher body fat levels, broad calorie control works, like we talked about, but at low levels, details are going to matter here. We're talking macro precision here of, like, you need to be on top of your protein day in and day out, carbs, fats, you need to be on top of that. You need to be on top of your caloric intake day in and day out. The wiggle room here for mistakes is slim to none. So again, this could easily be, you have all these things going on, and you're tracking, say, whatever amount, but again, you're not, like, a couple days here and there, you're not nailing your protein, right? We're talking you're 20 grams off. Well, at this point in time, these little details are going to matter more than it would for someone trying to go from 15 to 10% body fat. Food quality is going to be super important during this time. If you're having foods that, more processed type foods, they're not very filling. Again, maybe fiber's low, whatever it may be, this could be causing you to retain some water weight, could lead to some inflammation, and just kind of giving you a little bit more of a puffier look in your midsection, which you may feel like you're not losing weight now, right? So food quality is going to be super important. Meal timing, meal timing is going to be even more important in this process, in terms of timing your meals to make sure that we limit hunger as much as possible, but we also, from like a training standpoint, right, making sure we're meal timing around that. Meal timing in terms of, setting it up with your circadian rhythm. Again, these things really start to impact more. Weekend consistency, right? Like I said, being more strategic with refeeds and diet breaks. Like, these are all things that need to be ultra, like, dialed in at this point in time. And again, if it's not, you may find that it's challenging to lose that last little bit of body fat here. He did mention he's worried about, like, losing some muscle. Look, in this case, if you're finding that you are lean everywhere, which again, like I said, generally speaking, people need to get a little bit leaner than they think. And again, if we're doing all these things that I'm talking about, muscle loss shouldn't necessarily be too big of an issue. But in saying that, as we get super lean, say under 10% from a male perspective, and you want to continue to get leaner in certain areas, that may be part of the process. I had Steve Hall on the podcast about a month or so ago, and he talked about his prep where, he wanted to get his glutes very striated. So that's going to require very low levels of body fat. And for him to continue to do that, he needed to, like him losing some muscle was one of the potential trade-offs of getting leaner there. And he compared himself to somebody else who just had a larger base of muscle, so they had a little bit more wiggle room to be able to get leaner in certain areas. Okay, and this could just be the case. This is like one of those things where, oh hey, you want to be absolutely shredded. It's just kind of you can't necessarily have your cake and eat it too, or whatever that saying is, right? Like, unfortunately, there may be some trade-offs here. Age is going to matter too. I think as you get a little bit older, I think this is going to be a little bit more of a challenge for, kind of the things I talk about from a physically not ready standpoint, high stress on the body, things like that. One thing that could help you, doing some dedicated ab work, if you don't ever do any of that, that could be something that helps you get a little bit more definition in your abs, potentially, there. But again, I would be looking at like the physical side of things that I was talking about in terms of you just have a lot of stress on the body. So a couple things you can do here is, you have that trade-off of like, hey, maybe I'm going to lose a little bit of body fat. Or again, maybe you need to dial in some of these things I talked about. Maybe you do need to take some stress off the body. So it is a couple refeed days or a diet break week or whatever it may be. Or again, maybe it's like, hey, this is where I'm at. I don't want to lose any more muscle. Then that's just the trade-off you're going to have, right? Again, maybe you could, like I said, get some more dedicated ab work in there. Or again, it's, hey, now you just need to go through another phase of adding some more muscle, take some stress off the body, try again. But again, this is all, to me, this is the fun part of it, is you get to kind of test how far you want to get. For me, in my last couple photo shoots, and even when I dieted for bodybuilding competitions, I never got truly lean enough to where I was ever going to win anything during my bodybuilding competitions. I felt like I didn't have any more to give. I already felt like I was dropping a little bit of muscle. Again, could I've had other things dialed in, knowing what I know now, probably, to offset some of that. But this comes back to the big thing here where like I felt like I was super lean and I probably needed to lose even a little bit more weight. And it's just kind of crazy to think, people don't realize how lean they have to get to, be super shredded. And again, that's what this person would be at, because you can definitely, you can see their top abs there, and so they look fairly lean, like they look very lean overall. So again, it could be some dedicated ab training as well too. But also, again, to come back to what I was talking about, I made this podcast a couple weeks ago, episode 552, struggling to lose fat in your midsection. Here's why and what to do. And a few things came down to, again, just overall stress on the body. So again, overall body fat percentage, again, maybe you just need to continue to get leaner. Maybe that's where it comes off last. It could be a nutrition and diet quality thing, right? So like I talked about, poor nutrition, poor diet quality could impact gut health, which again kind of leaves you feeling like, just a little bit puffier in your midsection. Stress, again, that's going to do the same thing. It's going to just make you look a little bit puffier in your midsection and overall. Again, poorly managed training stressors. So if we're just kind of trying to push balls to the wall in training and we're not, focused on the lifestyle habits in combination, again, that could be something that impacts, it's just more stress on the body. So again, a lot of this just comes down to stress on the body, poor digestion, again, stress on the body. Again, age, that's going to be something, like I said, if maybe from a hormone standpoint, things are off a little bit there as well too, right? Maybe testosterone isn't as good as it can be. And the downside with when you do get super lean, testosterone does drop down a little bit. But poor sleep, circadian hygiene, like those are things that are going to impact all these things. I would say one strategy that you could potentially try to implement, and this would be something that I would more so do for men than women, would be some some fasted cardio. That could be something that helps you get a little bit extra body fat off there. So potentially utilizing fasted cardio in the morning could be something that you do at this stage in time there. So those are the main things. Hopefully, with this, you learned why it's challenging to lose that last little bit. Again, it's a combination of mental, physical, sorry, I had these in my notes, mental, physical, skill, and then also all the other things that I talked about, and just expectation as well too, right? I think that's another big thing. So if you have any questions on this, let me know. That's it for this episode. Again, if you find this stuff interesting and you want to get a good setup for you, my body recomp checklist is for you. Again, that is free and it's in the show notes there. If you found this podcast to be helpful, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. If you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff HOE. That's where I'm most active on social media, and I answer questions. So if you ask me questions, I'll answer them on here. And then lastly, if you need help with any of this stuff, my free 30-minute strategy calls for you. The link to that is in the show notes. That's it for me, and I'll chat with you next time.